Hey y'all, it's Stacy. Welcome back to the kitchen. Today we're going to make what I think is the best garlic bread. Now, if you love this video and you like my recipes, why don't you hit that subscribe button? That way you'll be notified every time we post a new recipe video. Now, every great garlic bread recipe starts with garlic butter. So that's where we're going to start today. I've got a small saucepan here that I'm just going to turn the low heat on because what we're going to do is we're going to start by melting butter. We're going to add about 3/4 of a cup of unsalted butter to our pan here to allow that to melt. Now, I often get questions on the blog about, can I use salted butter in the place of unsalted? So here's kind of the rationale behind using unsalted versus salted butter. Unsalted butter, of course, doesn't have salt in it. So we can control the salt content in whatever it is that we're making. In this case, salted butter will work just fine. We're going to add salt to it. The other issue here in terms of salted versus unsalted is different brands of butter have different amounts of salt when we're talking about salted butter. So sometimes you might need to use less salt in a recipe if you use salted butter. Other times you may have to use no salt at all because of those varying levels. So in terms of recipe development, it's just a good rule of thumb to use unsalted. That way we can control how much salt is in our recipes. Next is our garlic. We're going to add 4 cloves of garlic to this recipe. So what I've got here is I've got a clove of garlic that I'm just going to break off about 4 cloves. You know, if you want it to be really garlicky, you can absolutely add more garlic to this. 4 seems about right. What I'm going to do is I've broken these cloves off, and I'm just going to take my knife and just pop them just a little bit to kind of bust them open, and that just makes the process of getting the peel off of these a whole lot easier. All right, now once my garlic is peeled, I'm just gonna chop it with a knife. You can absolutely run this through a garlic press if you'd like, but for me, I like to see the garlic on the bread, and I also like the kind of flavor that those chunks of garlic get when they toast up in the oven. So just run through it quickly with a knife, chop it up pretty finely, or, like I said, you can 100% use a garlic press too. All right, once we've got our garlic finely minced, I'm just gonna pile this up on my cutting board here. You can see that my butter has melted, so I'm just gonna turn this off. What we're gonna do is we're gonna add this garlic right into our butter and just allow it to steep. All right, so I rinsed the garlic off of my hands. We're gonna let that garlic sit in the pot here for about 3 minutes and just allow that butter to take on that garlic flavor. Let's talk about the bread. Now, if you've been following me for any period of time, you know that we use what I call the Walmart rule. That means that for most of the recipes that we post on the blog, we ensure that you can purchase those ingredients at Walmart. Because the reality is that like 90% of the country lives within 15 miles of a Walmart. And if we make recipes where folks can get the ingredients, it just makes things easier. And that's what I'm about, is making cooking easier. This bread that I use for this recipe comes from Walmart. It's $1. It's super affordable, and it works perfectly in this recipe. Now, this is labeled French bread. Is it really French bread? Probably not, but I will say this. It's certainly not baguette. You can kind of see the size, and this is a 14-ounce loaf of bread. It's soft because we're gonna put this in the oven for about 15 minutes, so it's gonna firm up. And if we use something that already has a really hard, crispy exterior crust, it's just gonna get harder. So opt for something like an Italian loaf or this particular Walmart bread so that your result is the same as mine. You can kind of see how soft this is. What we're gonna do is we're just gonna split this bread in half lengthwise. And having a good bread knife does make this process a little bit easier. And I have a rimmed baking sheet over here that I'm just going to put this bread right on top of. Try to get it as even as possible, but again, don't stress over it, no big deal. All right, let's talk about our garlic butter here. This has been steeping for, like I said, about 3 minutes, just allowing that garlic flavor to get all through there. We're gonna add a little more flavor to this. I'm gonna add about 1/4 to 1/2 teaspoon of salt here. And just for some color, I'm gonna add about a tablespoon of dried parsley. If you wanna use fresh parsley, you can absolutely do that. And I'm just eyeballing this. It doesn't have to be exact. Got a pastry brush here, and to keep from having to wash more dishes, I'm just gonna stir this up with my pastry brush. Now all we're gonna do is just brush this garlic butter right on top of our bread. You may have to use your brush as a little bit of a scoop to pick up some of those chunks of garlic, just to make sure we get all that transferred onto our bread here. All right, so we got all of our garlic butter spread onto our bread here. Now, it may seem like a lot, but trust me when I say you can't have too much butter. That being said, if you do use a different type of bread, you may need a little bit less, but that's totally okay. I'm sure that you can find some other use for some delicious garlic butter. This is gonna go in a 400-degree oven for about 15 minutes. Then, if we wanna get that top a little more golden brown, we might switch it to broil. All right, let's give this a check. It's been about 15 minutes. You can see that the butter is foamed up. Our garlic is just starting to toast on the edge, but I want this to be a little more brown. I want a little more of that golden brown color. I'm gonna turn the oven to broil and put it back in there for 2 or 3 minutes, but watch this very carefully because it can go from golden brown to black very quickly. All right, once this is cool enough to handle, I'm gonna transfer it over to my cutting board here and just slice it up. You're gonna wanna serve this while it's warm because it's gonna be best, but I've even had readers tell me that because it makes so much, they've frozen the other half and just reheated it when they needed garlic bread for another meal. It's great with pasta, spaghetti, or even if you're looking for something a little over the top, you can turn this into garlic bread pizza. Once it's cool enough to handle, smear some pizza sauce on there, put a few toppings, some cheese, pop it back in the oven just until that cheese is melted, and you've got a super over-the-top garlic bread pizza. Folks, you can find this easy recipe by heading over to the website at southernbite.com and just searching for best garlic bread. Y'all enjoy.